Hi, I'm Frank Finnerty. I'm a member of the Egg Harbor Township Committee, and I'm filling in for Sonny McCullough for the Mayor's Forum today. And my guest today is Eileen Tedesco of the Egg Harbor Township Clerk of Egg Harbor Township. Eileen is here today to talk about the Department of the Township Clerk and basically what it does and how it serves the community. Let's begin, Eileen, with who is eligible to vote.
Sure, Frank, and thanks for having me. You'll see on the screen that there's some criteria here for voting in New Jersey. In order to register to vote, you have to be a citizen of the United States. You have to be at least 17 years of age to register, but you need to be 18 years of age by the time the election would occur. You also need to be a resident of the state and of the county for at least 30 days prior to an election.
And when does someone register to vote?
Well, there's different deadlines. That changes each year and with each election. And for the upcoming primary election, which will be held in June, the voter registration deadline is May the 15th, and the Township Clerk's office will be open till 7:30 that evening to accept voter registrations. People can also register to vote through the Superintendent of Elections office.
Yeah, and that doesn't take long for them to do that.
No.
It's like, what, a 5-10 minute procedure once they walk into your office?
Correct.
Okay.
It's just a simple
It's a
form,
very simple form
that gets mailed in.
Then it's mailed to the county?
Yes, to the Superintendent of Elections.
Superintendent of Elections, okay.
That's correct.
How does a registered voter change their party affiliations? Now, for the public, you can designate yourself as a Republican, a Democrat, a unaffiliated, or sometimes referred to as independent. I assume this question deals with a primary?
Yes. In order to vote in a primary election, a voter needs to declare themselves as either a Republican or a Democrat. They can do that ahead of time by filing a party affiliation form. It's just a simple application that they fill out. They can obtain that through the clerk's office or through the county offices. Or they can also, if they have not declared themselves, then they can declare themselves at the polls at the primary election.
Sometimes people get a little confused between a primary and a general election. In a primary, it's the only time that you have to determine who you're going to vote for. You are requested to tell if you're Republican or Democrat, because in a primary, what's the difference between a primary and a general election? Okay,
the way that I would explain that is, in a primary election, you have a pool of candidates on both sides, for both parties, Republicans and Democrats, running for any particular position. Say if it was for the governor, you may have 3 people running as Democrats, and you may have 3 people running for Republican. So at the primary, the voters of those particular parties go in and elect or vote rather for the individual in their party that they want to see on the ballot come November in the general election. And at the general election, all voters are welcome to vote, and they can vote for either political party. Right? They can mix up their ticket however they choose.
Yeah, the general election, you can, you can vote for anyone. In the primary, you're voting for your candidate, for your party's candidate. Are there any documents required by the voter when they appear to vote for the very first time?
Potentially. When they fill out their voter registration form, if they do that by mail, they're just simply filling out the form, and they're not providing ID. But so if that's the case, if they choose to register by mail rather than in person at the county superintendent of elections office, when they go to the polls to vote for the very first time, they are going to be required to show ID, a photo government ID, such as a driver's license, a passport, military ID, something like that.
Often people get confused on something called the provisional ballot Can you explain, Eileen, what is a provisional ballot? How is it used, when it's used?
Sure. Provisional ballots are a paper ballot, and they're used at the polls on Election Day, and for a variety of reasons. Okay, it could be that a voter is registered in the county, in Atlantic County, but they've moved from one municipality to another and didn't file a change of address. And under those circumstances, the poll worker will provide the voter with a paper ballot, give them a secure area where they'll have privacy and they can go and complete that provisional ballot. It gets placed in a sealed envelope when they're done, and then it goes at the end of the election, at the end of the close of polls on an election. The provisional ballots then go to the county where they are counted.
So in other words, once in a while somebody moves and the new address is not been recorded, or it's not in the book that you sign at voting time. So rather than prevent somebody from voting, you give them a provisional ballot. They fill out the ballot in a private area, and then that provisional is collected, and then they do check it at the county to see that you are truly eligible to vote.
Correct.
If you're not registered, that provisional would not be counted, correct?
That's correct. They're going to confirm that you are, in fact, eligible to vote before they would count that vote.
How does a voter go about getting a ballot to be mailed, vote by mail?
Okay. There is an application for that, and those applications can be obtained through the Township Clerk's office or by calling the county, excuse me, the county clerk's office. They'll provide that to you. Again, it's a very simple form that gets filled out, and it gives you at the bottom of the form, it gives you the option to say, I just want to vote by mail this particular election, or from now on, I want to continue to get them for each and every election, or the other option is just to receive them for general elections.
This vote by mail application, it used to be called an absentee. Wasn't it referred to as an absentee? Now they refer to it as vote by mail?
Correct.
And basically, at one time, there were restrictions on how you could use an absentee, but pretty much now, almost anyone can apply for a vote by mail, and there is some advantages to that also, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Years ago, they were very strict on who could apply for a mail-in ballot. Basically, it would only be if you were in the hospital or you were out of state, out of the area rather, on business, and you had to provide proof of that. They have changed it now to encourage voting.
Right. I mean, it used to be like, for example, the vote by mail is a good idea, especially I've encountered people sometimes didn't realize they planned a vacation on election day, and they're very faithful in voting, and all of a sudden they can't vote because they have a vacation, or someone got sick, or they had to be out of state. So vote by mail has become a little bit more popular way of voting.
Definitely,
Yeah.
yes.
If a voter decides to apply to vote by mail, what are the deadlines associated with the application and the ballot?
Okay, there's several deadlines. May 29th is the deadline to apply for the mail-in ballot by mail. You would mail that in. And then we also have our overseas civilians and military voters, and they have a different deadline. They apply online by June 1st, so they do that electronically. People that, again, wish to apply for a mail-in ballot but missed the mail-in deadline can go in person to the county clerk's office and submit their mail-in
And where's that
application
location,
there.
the county clerk's office?
That's on Main Street and Mays Landing, the historic courthouse.
Right, right,
I believe it's 5901 Main Street.
right. What about registered voters? Who will be voting at the polls? When can they expect to get their sample ballots in the mail?
Okay, the Superintendent of Elections Office is responsible for mailing sample ballots out. They have to do that this year. They have to do that by April 21st. So voters should expect to receive their sample ballots in the mail by the last week of April.
Yeah, and
by
the
the end of
sample
April.
ballot more or less gives a voter an opportunity to look at the ballot that they're going to see on the machine.
Yes.
So it's just, and it also gives other important information where they have to vote.
There's a wealth of information on the provisional ballot. In addition to it'll list all the candidates that are up for election. It will list any questions, any public questions that may be up at a particular election. It indicates your polling place. And I always suggest to voters, I always encourage them to review that prior to going to the polls, as well as to take it with them to the polls. Because if a voter's page should be missing from the book for some unknown reason, it's very helpful to the poll worker if the voter has that sample ballot in their hand. It confirms that they are registered to vote.
Egg Harbor Township is a very large town, probably one of the largest in Atlantic County. How many voting districts are there in the township, and where are they located?
Well, we have 22 districts, definitely one of the largest in Atlantic County, and on the screen is a snapshot of the different locations, all 22 districts. And again, that's another reason for reviewing that sample ballot, is that your location will be on there. If for some reason there was ever a change, and that does occur from time to time, that there will be a change in a voting location. And when that does occur, that's quite a process. It does require notification from our office to the voters. We do that individually to the residents, as well as in the paper, on our website. That hasn't occurred in a while, but sometimes people miss all those notifications. Right. So again, always important to look at the
What would you
sample ballot.
recommend to a voter that the last week prior to election they still have not received their sample ballot? What recommendation would you make to that possible voter?
They could either call the Township Clerk's office or call the County Superintendent of Elections, or they could go to the State Division of Elections website. And they have a very user-friendly website. They have a link that says, "Am I registered to vote?" You go on there, you just put in some basic personal information, and it'll indicate whether you are registered or not.
Could that be a signal, if you don't get a ballot, could that be a signal that you may not be registered?
Possibly, but not
Sometimes?
definitely.
Okay, sometimes you might be registered, but the ballot just doesn't get there.
For some unknown reason, it just
Right,
doesn't go
okay.
out. So in those cases, you should definitely follow up with the County Superintendent of Elections office, is who I would call just to confirm that.
Can you give the audience an overview of the department, the kind of things that the township clerk does on a daily basis? I know there's many things that take place, and probably many of the people in the audience are not familiar with all the things that you do.
Sure. The clerk's office provides a variety of services to the residents. One of the roles that we offer is the Registrar of Vital Statistics. What that means is we house birth, death, and marriage licenses for events that occurred in Egg Harbor Township. We also issue marriage licenses.
Now, where do you get that information from? In other words, recording death, birth, how's it get to your office, that information?
Okay, so for a birth, we don't have a hospital, so we house birth certificates for people that were born at home or on the road or in a parking lot. Okay, and so those certificates are filed with my office, as opposed to the general situation is you're in a hospital.
And death?
Deaths that occur in Egg Harbor Township where the person is pronounced dead, within our limits.
And was that come by way of the coroner?
Yes. In the last few years, that process has changed. It's done electronically. So the funeral director or the physician will file the information online, the death certificate. It goes through a process, and it ultimately is sent to my office, where either myself or my deputy, who is the Deputy Registrar of Vital Statistics, will review it and accept it, and then it becomes our record.
And that's held on a computer? Or,
Yes, the older records are paper, so they're
Right,
in
right.
books, and then the death certificates, the more recent ones, are electronic, as well. And the births have just switched to electronic within like the last year.
Okay, you were going to continue with some of the other things?
Yes. So in addition to housing the births, deaths, and marriages which occur in Egg Harbor Township, we also accept marriage applications from residents or individuals who reside out of state but want to get married in Egg Harbor Township. So once someone comes in and applies, there's a brief waiting period. We issue the license, and then they're free to get married. Our residents are free to get married anywhere
They
within
can
the
get
state.
married in a church or a judge and the mayor?
Correct.
Right?
Yes, by
Various-
any officiant they choose, and in any municipality within the state they choose. The only people that are restricted, the only couples that are restricted to getting married in Egg Harbor Township are those who come from out of state. They must apply in the town where they're going to get married.
Okay.
And the other thing we do with vital statistics is we issue certified copies. So as anyone who's ever gone to motor vehicle knows, you need to provide 6 points of ID, and one of those is generally your birth certificate, a certified copy of your birth certificate, or a marriage license. So that's something else that the office handles. Other things that we do, as you know, is we work with the Township Committee. So we prepare meeting agendas, and also after the meetings, after attending the meetings, we prepare minutes, which is an overview of what occurs at the meeting. And both the agendas and the minutes are online through the Township's website. They're available online, or certainly through the clerk's office. Somebody could request copies of those. Regarding licenses, we issue numerous licenses.
Yeah, why don't you explain that a little bit? Just
Sure.
not maybe all of them, but just maybe cover some of the various licenses that you permit.
Sure. The common ones are dog licenses.
Okay.
And of course, with the new dog park in town, we're seeing an increase of pet owners coming in for getting their dog license. That's a requirement for joining the dog park. We also issue yard sale licenses, and they're very popular spring through fall.
Right.
And
Are you involved with like licenses of liquor licenses?
Yes. Now, liquor licenses are actually a state license, but the Division of ABC relies on the local municipal clerk to accept those applications, and they also rely on the police department to do the background investigation of any individuals who want to purchase a liquor license.
Okay.
And there are, you had asked about common licenses. The other would be business licenses. We do about 600 business licenses on average a year.
Like, explain that a little bit. 600 business licenses. In other words, in order to have a business in Egg Harbor Township, you have to get licensed.
Correct. Correct. We have different categories, for the various types of licenses, but any of the retail establishments, of course, would have to be licensed.
Does that require inspection also, or?
It doesn't require, well, I shouldn't say it doesn't require inspection. From my office, as far as issuing the business license, it requires a zoning approval. And as part of that, that then brings in the construction department into the mix of that process.
Okay.
So if a certificate of occupancy or any kind of inspections are required, they would become aware and involved at that point as well.
And is there any particular area that is especially challenging? That
With the business licenses?
Well, no, with anything in the clerk's office, is there anything in particular that requires maybe a lot of time, a lot of effort, maybe a lot of frustration? Is there anything?
Well,
everything goes smooth, right?
Everything goes
Eileen?
smooth, yeah. Everything goes
Okay,
smooth, yeah.
all right, okay. When and where is Egg Harbor Township free rabies event this year?
Okay, this year it's going to be held on March 24th, Saturday, March 24th, and that's at the Public Works Garage on Mill Road. And we break that down, we separate the dogs from the cats. so that we offer vaccinations for the dogs between the hours of 9 and 11:30, and then we reserve the last half hour, 11:30 to noon, for cats. We just
You
feel
don't
that
mix the cats and dogs together?
no, it's
That's smart.
it's much more calmer for everybody, including the dogs and the cats.
Yeah.
And with that, I would just like to point out the fees. If your pet is spayed or neutered, if the dog is spayed or neutered, the fee is $9 for the license, which we will issue at the clinic. And for non-spayed, neutered dogs, the price is $15. We don't require licensing for cats, only for the dogs.
Okay.
And at the clinic, we ask that the pet owners bring exact change or a check.
Okay.
Since we're operating out of the garage.
How often does the township hold a free rabies clinic, and are there any other opportunities throughout the year?
Yes, the township holds the annual rabies clinic sometime in the month of March. The reason why we choose March is dogs are required to be licensed. The licensing begins in January. It's from January 1 through December 31, but we allow a 3-month grace period before we would institute a $3 late fee. So we always hold that clinic in March to give pet owners that, as much opportunity as we can for them to come in and get the rabies shot and the license before the late fee would go into effect. Now, in addition to that, the Atlantic County Animal Shelter holds a free rabies clinic once a month. Those dates fluctuate, so pet owners should go to their website to find out when the next.
And who actually administers the rabies shot?
We deal with a local vet. Currently, we're having Dr. Newkirk come in and provide that service, but we do rotate amongst the area veterinarians.
So each year there might be a different vet from the area
Correct.
that administers it.
Someone from the area,
Good.
yes.
Licensing your dog is also important. If you wish to join Friends of the Egg Harbor Township Dog Park, once they have a valid dog license, how do they join?
Okay, the dog park is a nonprofit organization comprised entirely of volunteers. So I would refer people to their website where they can obtain information on the requirements to obtain access to the dog park. I do know that they do require a dog license, a current dog license from the municipality where the pet owner resides, not necessarily EHT, because they do accept dogs and from other towns, surrounding areas.
It's actually a private group.
Correct.
Okay, the township gave them land to utilize, but it is a private group. They take care of everything themselves. And
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about yard sales and how a resident would go about having a yard sale in the township.
Sure. So for yard sales, residents are allowed to have 4 yard sales per year. They're limited to 2 days per sale. There's a fee of $5 that goes along with each sale, and we do require proof of ownership from the applicant. If an individual is a tenant and not a homeowner, then we would require written permission from the landlord that they're able to hold a sale.
And maybe a ballpark figure, how many requests do you get for yard sales?
Oh, about 300, and that's basically between April and October.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Township Clerk's Department also keeps all the vital statistics for the township. Can you tell us what that entails?
Sure. So as custodian of vital records, as I had alluded to before, we house all the birth, deaths, and marriage certificates for events that occur in Egg Harbor Township. So nowhere else, only if the birth occurred in Egg Harbor, the birth, death, or marriage occurred in Egg Harbor Township. Our records go back to 1849, and as well, certified copies can be obtained for any one of those events by applying to our office.
And you say 1849 because most of South Jersey or most of Atlantic County was incorporated within Egg Harbor Township.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
yes.
different towns pulled out to make their own individual city or town, and whatever was left became Egg Harbor Township as we know it today.
That's correct. And also, because there are so many towns that branched off, sometimes we find that we don't have a record. And so in those cases, we refer people to the Office of Vital Statistics in Trenton because they house all records for all municipalities, which is pretty overwhelming when you think about that, how many records that they're responsible for.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Where would a resident go if they wanted an application for a marriage license?
They could come to the Township Clerk's office in person. We'll provide that to them. We also have it on our website through the State Office of Vital Statistics link, where they can download that application. That entails them coming to the clerk's office. The couple comes to the clerk's office together with a witness to submit the application. And once they submit the application, they have to wait 72 hours before they would come back to actually pick up the license. And from the time that they come to pick it up, they have 30 days in which to get married.
So Eileen, your office is pretty busy. You're doing a
Yes,
lot.
we are.
A lot of phone calls, a lot of follow-up things that you got to do. I mean, you're one of the busiest departments in the township.
Yes, often when people don't know which office to contact, they'll contact the clerk's office for
Right.
direction, and then we'll guide
And
them.
by the
from
way,
there.
how long have you been with the township?
39 years.
39 years.
Yes.
Oh, you look too young to be 39 years. Really?
Yeah, and it doesn't seem that long,
Yeah.
but yeah.
No, it's not good. Thank you, Eileen, for being on the show today. Your staff provides outstanding services to our residents. Please pass on to my thanks to them and to their dedication, because we do have a very, very good clerk's office. You know, a sign that you have good departments is that the complaints are minimal. When you don't have good departments, we hear about those complaints. So it's always nice to have people like yourself and the staff we have that solve problems rather than make problems. So we really, truly thank you, and keep solving those problems.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Thank you. If our viewers have a topic of discussion or any person that you would like the mayor to interview on his mayor's forum, please contact the township at 926-4044. Thank you for joining us today.